Welcome to another episode of the behind the scenes content for Wonder Woman Spirit of Truth, presented by Don't Sue Us Please. Today we have a little bit of a different episode. Instead of our normal behind the scenes interview, you get a 1-hour watch along with Matthew Klein and John Petrie, the writers of Wonder Woman Spirit of Truth by Don't Sue Us Please. They're watching Wonder Woman Series 1975, Season 1, Episode 2. Wonder Woman meets Baroness von Gunther. You can watch along on DC Universe, or if you have the DVD, feel free to watch along with them. You can also just listen to two friends chat about their love for Wonder Woman, as it is really enjoyable. As is the same with our previous interviews, this was recorded during the COVID-19 pandemic, meaning it's recorded remotely over Zoom, so the quality may not be pristine. Also, the unfortunate sounds of my neighbor's lawnmower can be heard occasionally in the background. So intermixed with our normal dialogue, you may hear the soothing sounds of suburbia. I apologize in advance. Anyways, the last thing before we get started, Don't Sue Us Please is proudly brought to you by listeners like you supporting us on Patreon. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/the Superhero Podcast. You can also find us on all social media at the Superhero Podcast. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to another behind-the-scenes edition of Don't Sue Us Please. My name is Matthew Klein. I'm here today with...
John Petrie. Hello.
Hello. We are the co-writers for Wonder Woman Spirit of Truth, and today we are bringing you guys a first. So John and I are going to be doing a watch-along. In all of our time working on Wonder Woman together, in all of our fandoms, having worked in comic book shops, and also for publishers in our history with the property, I have actually never watched an episode of the Linda Carter series from beginning to end. And I understand, John, that this is a mortal sin according to your religion.
Every time I hear you say that, it's like a stone in my heart.
Well, I'll say this. I don't know if it's better to have a stone in your heart than in your kidneys like I'm used to, but for that pain, I'm here to help you pass this stone if you were. So today we are going to be watching an episode from the series. Now, we're doing this a little bit of different ways after some technical issues. I'm going to be watching on the DC Universe online. John, how are you watching it today?
I am watching on my DVD, Season 1, signed by Miss Linda Carter. Thank you very much. Oh,
signed by Diana Prince herself.
So, backstory on this.
Yes, before we start.
I worked for Barnes & Noble for many, 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 many years.
That is very true. Many.
Actually, I think probably longer than Josh has been alive.
That's Josh Wilson, for those of you who don't know, our amazing sound designer and composer and just all-around wunderkind who makes John and I feel very old.
And also, fun fact, I also worked at Barnes & Noble.
Oh, and Josh from the heavens. Hello, Josh.
Hi.
So,
we're going to have to gossip about B&N later.
We can do that later. That's a later time.
So I worked at one store, which is no longer there, up in Lincoln Center in New York City. And Linda Carter is releasing her first CD. And I begged them, I was like, please get Linda Carter here, please get Linda Carter here. And then I transferred to another store and never heard anything about it. And then one day, the community relations manager called me up. Hey, John, I had you on speakerphone. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking like, screwed up a payment issue for them somehow. She said, guess who's coming? Linda Carter. And I screamed in the middle of the store. And I was like, I'll get there as soon as I can. Can you save me a seat? She's like, absolutely. I got to meet Linda Carter. I got my CD signed, and then I gave the community relations manager the slipcase. It's like, can you please have her sign this for me? It doesn't matter when it comes back. And she's like, don't worry about it. So 2 days later, they called me. They were like, it's here. Come pick it up. So yes, I have season 1 signed by Miss Linda Carter herself. And that was the first time I cried when I met Linda Carter.
Oh, the first time. Well, I look forward to hearing about all the times as we go on this journey. Now, so we're going to be doing a bit of a watch along here. We're really excited if you guys can join us too, whether that's on DVD, whether it's on DC Universe Online or some other streaming service. We do not encourage pirating on Don't Sue Us, Please. Artists need to get paid. So what we will do is we're going to have a little bit of a countdown. We're going to make sure we're at 0 minutes, 0 seconds in. And as you watch along with us, John and I are probably going to trade a few stories about our fandom. I'm going to ask a lot of questions, being a newbie here. And John, I look forward to you being my Sherpa of all things Linda Carter.
I am here as your Wonder Sherpa.
Oh, beautiful. It beats the Sherpa woman. So, John, my friend of so many years, are you ready?
I am always ready for Linda Carter.
All right. So I am at 0 minutes, 0 seconds. Are you as well?
I am.
Okay. So do you want to do the countdown?
Here we go.
Right. So wait, are we going to do 3, 2, 1, then go? Are we going to do 3, 2, 1, and then go on 1? How do you want to do this?
Let's do 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, you got it, Murtaugh. Let's do it.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go. Right, so this was my most exciting hour of the week because we only got 1 hour of television a day.
Did you really?
Yeah.
It sounds like a strict household, my friend.
Well, I mean, it wasn't like we didn't work around it, but I deemed this as my hour. I called the TV. At the time, the show was on ABC for this episode. We're doing the second episode.
Oh, yes, this is the second episode. Wow, we failed horribly there. This is the second episode of season 1. That's okay.
Yeah.
They'll get with it. It's just the theme song right now.
Baroness von Gunther. So I would call the TV. I want to say Tuesday nights. Could be wrong about that. It's like, I get the TV 8 to 9. You're a woman.
So, like, how old were you when this came out? Do you remember?
I think I must have been 7 or 8, maybe. Actually, no. Original air date 11/7/75 for the pilot.
Right.
So I was 2 days from my birthday, and the pilot came out. This episode, this was like 6 months later. This was April of 76. So I would have been 5 years old.
That is about a year and almost a year and a half before my older sister was born when this episode debuted.
Josh isn't the only one who makes me feel old.
You're welcome. The beauty of it is, John, is I will always be younger than you by a significant margin. And this makes me feel better about myself. And I appreciate you doing that for me.
Excellent. I hope to always light the way for people to make better choices than I did.
So it's set during World War II, is this season 1. And I'm just curious, like, were you reading the comics by the time you had started watching this, or did this come first?
I think this came first by a couple of months, and here's how I sort of know this.
Okay.
So what DC did, when the TV show was placed in the 40s, comic book was taking place in the 70s.
Right.
Once the TV show took off, actually switched over to Earth 2. And then the show took place. And then, okay, so fun fact, I'm going to stop.
The twirl, she's doing her famous twirl after the first scene in the office where anyone could walk in and see her.
Yes. Now, this twirl, now, first of all, you notice the bracelets aren't there.
Yeah.
Um, this twirl only took place in the first 3 episodes. Reason being, it was so expensive to do the stop motion photography and to do the special effects. They, after
I like that the federal
episode,
penitentiary has no name other than federal penitentiary. Sorry, just the.
No, that's okay. I'm sure they saved a lot of money printing the signs at Staples.
Well, I mean, you used to work at Staples, so you would have an idea of that, yeah.
Did.
Before I plucked you out of there.
The first 3 episodes, Swan, the pilot, and Costa Nazi Wonder Woman, which was literally the title of the 3rd episode. Those were the only ones that had that stop motion spin.
Wow.
Then they
it's become so iconic.
Yeah, so they did the spin in the later episodes, but it just had the explosion over it.
Oh, wow. So it's like any great TV show. You spend your money on the first episode or 2, and then you're like, well, we've got them hooked now, so we can start trimming back. So then when was your first Wonder Woman comic after this?
Was later on this year. Trevor had just come back from the dead, had dyed his hair from blonde to black, was no longer going by Steve Trevor, but was going by Steve Howard.
So wait, so this is 76, 77, you're saying, or?
Yeah, this is 76.
When you read the comic, I mean.
I first read the comic.
Wow. So who was the creative team at that point? I'm trying to remember.
I want to say, I mean, I can pull the issue, but I think it was Marty Pasco writing it, and Marty Pasco was drawing it. Jose. Oh, that's gonna bug me.
I love that the lasso of truth is literally just a string that they made gold, that they painted gold.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. General Blankenship. That is my new Reddit name right there. That's what I'm going to call my account on Reddit. When I post in the Am I the Assholes forum, it's General Blankenship. Boom. Right then and there. Wow. I'm telling you what, Steve Trevor just delivering it with a lot of force. I appreciate the really forceful dialogue here.
Yeah, one of the things I love about this show, especially the first season,
was besides the portrait of Abraham Lincoln in the general's office that we're seeing right now, in General Blankenship's office.
So everybody in this show is being very over the top and campy, except for Linda Carter. And it really is one of those things. You know how sometimes you see a theater production, you're like, I don't know what show that person was doing, but everybody else doing a completely different show. This is kind of the same thing, but it really works because her performance completely grounds it and makes it a bit more real and a bit more human.
Well, I think also there's an argument probably to be made, right, that because of the costume she's in, the circumstances she's in, she doesn't have to go over the top. There's already so much working in that favor for her, right? But she doesn't need to. And I think that it's a nice juxtaposition, and it almost shows her otherworldliness, right? Everyone else is freaking out, going over the top, and she's finding a way to stay calm and resolute. And when the men around her are losing their heads, she's staying cool, which, is a very cool juxtaposition and shows her power over the others. I'm trying to remember what my first Wonder Woman comic was. It was a graphic novel because I didn't start reading singles in earnest until only a few years ago when I was with Valiant. So I think it was probably the first Wonder Woman read I had was probably the Hikatea. So And then I would just, because I came to comics so late, like Forbidden Planet is where I can say I really dove into comics before I started working there, but it was in college when I came to New York. Like my dad and I would go to a shop every now and then. Like we'd go to Fat Jack's and like walk around, but I wouldn't really buy anything. My uncle used to buy me a couple comics here or there. Like he bought me Death in the Family, the issues when Jason Todd is killed. And he bought me Death of Superman. And he said, save it. This is going to be your college fund one day. And boy, that didn't work out. But so it wasn't, there was a really, really, really attractive girl down the hall that I really liked. Whose name is Samantha Sharon. And she was reading the weekly series 52 and was talking about it. And I was just like, oh man, I need to start reading comics so I know what the hell she's talking about. And this will give me a conversation. And I'm just not the guy down the hall, just like, oh, you're pretty. So that was it. That was what got me in there and to start reading. And Forbidden Planet's really where I did most of my shopping. Forbidden Planet and Amazon, and Javier over at Forbidden Planet gave me my first recommendations.
Okay, so just to circle back, I looked it up. My first episode of my first issue of Wonder Woman
is
Wonder Woman Volume 220, September of 1976, which would have meant that it would have been released 4 months previously, August, July, June, May. It was written by Elliot S. Magan. It was penciled by Jose Delbo.
Wow. Two names I don't know that I've ever actually heard.
Oh, Jose Delbo drew Wonder Woman for years and years and years and years.
Did he?
He did. And as a matter of fact, I was not working for Valiant. One of your coworkers who I knew was going to a convention where Jose Delbo was. And I was like, can you get me a sketch of Wonder Woman? And it turned out that the person didn't end up going to the convention. So I never got my Jose Delbo sketch.
Who was it?
Someone who was very lovely and sweet. I'll tell you the person's name later.
Okay. Also, did that dude just get murdered by a wrench?
Did. And first of all, well, he didn't get murdered by a wrench. He just got knocked out.
He just got knocked out? Oh, it looked like a murder.
The essential part of this series is this episode is they're trying to frame Steve.
Of course they are. What is fascinating to me, though, is that long shot of Linda Carter trying to run in heels, in those heel boots. That is not an easy thing to do, I imagine.
Is not. If you really want to see them running in heels, later in this season, Linda Carter and Deborah Winger as Drusilla / Wonder Girl run down concrete in heels very, very fast. And I don't think they sped up the film. So I just want to give a shout out to...
There are the bracelets, though.
Yes.
We finally have them. Steve isn't waking up. As a time check, we are at 11 minutes and 46 seconds right now. So now you and I have had this conversation a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. What is your favorite run, not issue? What is your favorite run of Wonder Woman comics?
Okay, so I don't know that I can give you...
This is why I want to put you on the spot.
I can tell you the runs that I think people should absolutely read.
Shortly thereafter, Diana Prince. I do love the title cards as the comic book captions. I think that's very fun, and I appreciate they really embrace the comics influence on this show in a way that's really, really smart. I mean, this is it feels like it's being aimed a little bit more at a younger audience, for sure. But go ahead. Your favorite run that you don't want to
Favorite
say.
runs. Okay, so I
Choose
can't
between your
pick
children.
just one. But I would say the originals, the William Moulton Martin stuff, which is Wonder Woman issues 1 through 28, for a number of reasons. First of all, they are crazy in the best possible way, because people always talk about the weirdness of the Silver Age, like when Superman got the ant head and Batman had the zebra costume.
Yes,
and all of that stuff. That kind of thing was happening back in the 40s for Wonder Woman. Like they were literally just going, oh, it's just...
The boys just had to catch up.
Yeah, as usual.
I think what's fascinating... I think what's fascinating too is just looking at Marston's story is he was consulting with young women and female writers at the time, wasn't he, in terms of developing the voice of the character?
Was. And there was also a woman named Joy Murchison who was would often do the plots, and she would actually do the scripting.
That was the third in his relationship, though, right?
No. There was him, his wife, Elizabeth, and then Olive Byrne.
Right, Olive Byrne, okay.
This is actually, this kid kind of is a stand-in for all of the, generally the usually young boys, though sometimes young girls, that Wonder Woman kind of mentored and was always kind of helping them figure out, for the boys, she was always kind of like, hey, girls are just as good as you. And for the young girls, she was saying, you don't have to be second place. There are some things that happen in this episode that they lifted directly from Marston's stories. I also want to say I believe that everyone should read both of Greg Rucka's runs on Wonder Woman.
Oh, well, without question.
And
that first Rucka run is probably my favorite run that I've experienced. There is still so much more Wonder Woman I have not read than I have read. Let me be very clear. I've only dabbled in the 60s stuff. I've only dabbled in some of the 70s stuff. Very, very little. And by little, I mean like 2 or 3 issues probably of the original Marston run have I read. But yeah, no, the first Rucka run, especially the Gorgon storyline with Medusa and her being blinded is just, I mean, Drew Johnson was the Wonder Woman I thought of. His take on the character. Shout out to Drew. He was the first person I ever got a commission from at comic book conventions.
Really?
I think it was Denver Comic Con 2015. And it was, I just saw that he was there. I think I literally just on the guest list in the program, and I realized it was him. And then I walked over to his table, and I think it took 3 tries before he was actually at his table. And I met him. I introduced myself. I said, hey, I work for Valiant Entertainment. So nice to meet you. I'm a big fan. And he gave me a Wonder Woman. Not gave, like I paid him for Wonder Woman. I have it framed in the spare bedroom in my apartment now. Lauren let me frame that one and put it up. So,
love it.
It's so great. You've seen it. I know you've seen it.
I know I've seen it. Yeah, Drew Johnson is desperately wanted to buy a page, a very specific page, and it's on Comic Art Fans, and the person lists the for sale status as, you will have to pry this from my cold dead hands.
Is it the page you and I have always talked about? I think it's like issue 209 or 219?
Can look this up.
So John and I's favorite page of Wonder Woman of all time is the same one, and it's during this Incredible storyline, written by Greg Rucka, illustrated by Drew Johnson. And this is probably mid 2000s, the mid aughts decade. And it is Wonder Woman in full badass battle armor, preparing to do battle. And is it the Gorgon storyline? I'm trying to remember.
The Gorgon storyline. It's the issue before she has the big fight. It is issue 209.
It's 209. She's getting ready to go face Medusa. And the line's something like,
Let come.
Let it come.
They're supposed to fight at dawn.
They're supposed to fight at dawn, and they're trying to talk her out of it and the dangers of it. And she just says, regarding war and the fight and the dawn, just let it come. And it's the most badass single page ever. And I talked to Drew when I got the commission. I tried to see if it was still for sale, and he was like, "No, I sold it for like $1,000 to a dude." I was like, "Damn it!" It was years prior. So you found it. It is on Comic Fan Arts. It's amazing.
ComicArtFans.com. Okay, can we just stop for a second and talk about the irresponsible parenting that's going on here? Letting your child just walk around.
It was the 70s. Well, no, it was the 40s. There was so much irresponsible parenting in the 40s. Just look at my grandparents and look at your parents. So,
my parents were like, they were not, there was a lot of, in my day and age, it was like, go out and play, come back before the sun sets.
Sure, you used to trust your kids to go out and do it. You weren't scared of the world in the way that people are now, right? Like, you didn't think your kid was going to get kidnapped. There was no cell phones. There was no way to contact anyone either. But it didn't matter. You were just like, yeah, go out and play. I did not have that. By the time in the early 90s, when I was a wee lad of 5 and 6 or 7, I was not allowed to do that at all. My parents wanted to know where I was every second of every day. So, and I was too scared to go outside the house on my own anyway. I was just scared of everything. I do love the costumes on this show.
Yeah.
They did a great job rifling through some costume departments, World War II outfits. It's really, really good.
Second wonder spin of the episode.
Slow-mo, stop motion photography. Now, I'm just curious too. So what's fascinating too is like, this is at a time, just in terms of history, civil rights movement 10 years prior, the gay rights movement comes, the women's right movement is in full gear at this point in time. You're talking about the Equal Rights Amendment. And then there was a lot of questions about, is Wonder Woman a relevant role model for women in this day and age, even still today?
So,
and yeah,
is ultimately the kind of, and I am speaking as a cisgendered male, so I'm probably not most qualified to discuss.
Neither of us are most qualified to discuss. Let's be very clear. We'll give that.
The thing that's interesting to me is because the idea of feminism and the idea of women's rights changes so radically of each generation, you sort of have to kind of retell Wonder Woman's story. And what happens is the women who were really sort of spearheading the feminist movement of the 1970s grown up reading Wonder Woman in the 1940s. So when people are like, it's not relevant, sort of using it in a historical context, because you're looking at things that were published, you were 10 and 12, are no longer relevant when you're in your 40s.
Well, and you even saw like Gloria Steinem put Wonder Woman on the first issue of Ms. Magazine as the cover.
I own.
I would be shocked if you didn't own a copy of that. And I, as I recall, that was a major stamp of approval of saying, to your point, like this was a strong female archetype when Steinem and women, who were part of this movement had growing up was Wonder Woman.
And
I
it's
think
also, I mean, if you look at superhero archetypes, you have Superman. I'm going to use the three characters who've been around the longest, which is Superman, and you could compare that to Captain America, which is people who are saying, I am standing for what the ideal of America should be.
Mm-hmm.
You have Batman, who's very much about our dark impulses, our desire for revenge, our desire to right wrongs. And then you have Wonder Woman, who is very specifically about women's empowerment. And so, you're dealing with this idea of, this is perhaps one of my favorite lines. Couldn't find her way back to the cell block. Because talk about irresponsible wardening. Just letting people own your prison. Okay, so...
sounds like the governor on Walking Dead in season 2 or 3. Yeah, sure.
I don't remember what we were talking about. I'm sorry.
No, we were talking about kind of the archetypes of the DC Trinity, as it were. What's always fascinated me about it too is you look at Superman. Superman, if you were to take Superman of the Siegel and Schuster days, Superman would be considered far left liberal today. He dealt with poverty. Absolutely. He dealt with social justice. He dealt with unions. He dealt with, fighting against the mafia. He was against government oppression and big government. Like he was the underdog, fighting for the common person's, for the average Joe's rights, and in addition to also being woefully ignorant to the havoc and collateral damage he would cause in people's lives.
Yeah, well, there's actually one, I think it's either the second, third, it's very early on in the Superman stories. He actually traps a bunch of the wealthy and robber baron class in a mine to
show them
how dangerous it is.
I love that story.
Workers' conditions.
Yep.
So yeah, anyone who says that comic books aren't political doesn't know their comic book history.
They've been political since they started, since 1939. As far as superhero comics go, like if you don't want politics in your comics, find a different medium. Like you're reading the wrong one. It just doesn't exist. It has always been there. It will always be there, and it's important that it is there. You can agree or disagree with the politics. That's fine, but it's always been there. From the big ones, at the very top of it, literally the first cover of Captain America, he's punching out Hitler. That's not political. It's a politics that we can all get behind. Punch a Nazi, sure, but it's still political.
I can't think of anyone who would actually not be more than happy to punch a Nazi.
Well, probably the neo-Nazis are not so thrilled about it, unless they get mad at each other.
Yeah.
Wow, that is one hell of a red cloak she's wearing.
Yeah.
That is a very Handmaid's Tale sort of outfit, long before the Handmaid's Tale.
So, a little history of the Baroness and Gunther. She was I think she may have been the first repeat villain who wasn't a costume villain. She used a lot of gnosis and mind games. There were a lot of slave girls. There were a lot of bound women. And then she was also later on became formed, saved Wonder Woman.
You're talking about the comics now, by the way, just for the listeners.
About the comics.
Great. All right, just making sure. Sorry, just to clarify for the newbies on here.
And she was kind of the first, I think really in the Golden Age, the only formed Wonder Woman villain, eventually becoming an Amazon and um, getting a whole new face. And daughter was she was working for the Nazis because they had kidnapped her daughter, and it's a little history on Paula von Gunther.
The old trope of blackmailing someone by kidnapping their child. We see it so often in comics.
We do.
Heck,
but sometimes
for the upcoming showcase series that you and I are doing, I think we both ended up using that trope.
Yeah, we did.
We did. We really did. Which we may have to re-examine that. But it's comics, and they're very different characters and different timing. And I don't know about yours. Mine's very true to the comics itself in that one. But it's a very well-worn trope. Kidnap the child to blackmail the parent. The parent just can't simply be evil.
Oh, but I think there's a lot of a whole lot that goes into the sort of fairy tale of comics. There are old parents and step parents, and there's entire characters in both DC and Marvel and everywhere. Children are rebelling against the parents by being good.
Going as far back into, I'm a big fan of Greek mythology, and we are watching Wonder Woman. The Titans are killed by Zeus and the Olympians. Like, it's, Zeus is feuding with his children. Hera is kidnapping his bastards. So it's well trodden territory. Thousands upon thousands.
Does a lot more than just kidnap them.
Yes, she does do a lot more than just kidnap them. That's true.
Those Greek myths are not something you want to read to children at night unless they're sanitized.
They're really not. A lot of consent issues also in Greek mythology.
Lots of consent issues.
A lot of consent issues. Very problematic. Very problematic. A factor, a manifestation of the times they were in, I'm sure. But
now, here's one of these things that I don't understand about this episode.
Only one of these things?
Oh.
There's a lot I don't understand about what the heck's happening here, but I'm going with it because it's moving at a pretty good pace.
I've also been taking up a storm, and I apologize for that.
So No. They don't listen. They can't hear the episode. They can only hear us talking. And we are 30 minutes and 57 seconds for those of you who are keeping track. The Hound of Baskervilles. This kid is already my favorite.
Well, he wants to be Sherlock Holmes. That's why he
does want to be Sherlock. I just wish he wasn't wearing that stupid, hat, but that's okay.
And again, back to the bad parenting. Oh, go outside and play in the prison yard.
A lot of questions. And not only that, but he's even wearing colors similar to a prisoner as this small child. It's like, this is hilarious.
And here is a woman who is a Nazi. And there she's just wandering around Gen Pop. Not a problem.
I love that this small child is taking care of the golden lasso too. Also, it's just like, yeah, that makes total sense.
So that's one thing that I don't understand about the episode. Other thing that I don't understand about the episode is that Steve has been accused of sabotaging the war effort, and instead of a military tribunal or a judge and jury, they're literally letting a billionaire munitions killer decide whether or not Steve is guilty, which is incredibly fascinating to me.
I don't think they were really going for accuracy. Just my guess.
That's one of the reasons that I love them.
That's a bit of a narrative shortcut that you just have to suspend your disbelief, and you're hoping that the 6-year-old boys in outside of Boston are not going to question the way in which someone is
Although I'm Lynn and say, the movie and TV show where someone is supposed to be stealthy are really terrible at it.
They're pretty awful. I will argue that point on a few shows. I actually think The Americans do it very, very well. That show is fantastic for its depiction of espionage. And if you've never seen it, John, I cannot recommend that show enough.
I will watch it.
But in general, yes, a lot of, well, it also depends on how you're doing it, right? Like, I don't think Charlie's Angels was ever really giving a shit about whether they were being stealthy, covert. They were just like, let's get more TNA on here in Farrah Fawcett's hair.
Yes, there was a whole phrase for that show, which was Jiggle TV.
Jiggle TV. Oh, I have heard that. Okay. But even go to like James Garner on the Rockford Files. He wasn't real stealthy as a sleuth. Columbo was not real stealthy. Like even those Private Eyes, it just never worked. They only seemed to really start caring about it when you got into this platinum era of TV and the audience started becoming more sophisticated and being like, that would never work.
I will say, again, the fact that he's kind of arguing his case in front of someone who has nothing whatsoever to do with the judicial system.
Nope. I don't understand why he's pleading his case to this Nazi. I'm curious what the books are on his table, though. I don't know why. That just popped in my brain. I'm one of those people that I just get stuck on something that probably doesn't matter at all, but then I want to know everything about it and understand the choice that was made and why and what went into it. But I like to know everything about everything. It's a real problem I have.
I can tell you, so having worked in bookstores for a very long time, production companies literally just go in and they buy things that are pretty. There is no rhyme or reason.
Makes sense. It makes sense. It's all about the aesthetic. Them. Yes, they do. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've done that with furniture for like stage shows. I have absolutely bought a desk from the Container Store and returned it. I've bought fans and small tables from Bed Bath & Beyond, and I have returned them after the show is done because I did not want to shell out all the money for it. And I'm taking advantage of the system.
Bed Bath & Beyond and Container Store.
It's been years since I've done it. Does that make it any better?
No.
Okay. It's off Broadway. What do you expect me to do? I don't have any money to start with.
No, I totally understand budgetary issues.
So here's my big question to you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
As we only have about 13 minutes left. So what was it about Wonder Woman at such a young age that struck a chord with you and endeared you to the character for so much of your life?
Okay, so there's a lot that goes into this.
I'm aware. That's why I'm giving ourselves 13 minutes.
Okay, and I also want to make sure that we see this one particular scene up because it's genius. Everything about it is genius.
Well, we can pause your story when it comes up. You're running this at this point, so.
I
really want this child to fall out of the tree. Is he going to fall out of the tree? I hope he falls out of the tree.
No, but there is some child endangerment, so you know. The child endangerment episode. So there's many things that I love about Wonder Woman. As a young person, you didn't get in the 70s when I was growing up, sort of an education on what sexuality and sexual orientation and gender identity and all of that are generally quite aware from a young age that there's something is different about you, and you don't sort of maybe understand what it is. You just know we're constantly bombarded with images of and love stories of mommy and daddy and, boyfriend and girlfriend. You don't see what's happening. Anyway, that being said, Wonder Woman always, because she wasn't a punch first person the way Batman and Superman was, it's a very different character. Her idea was not, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to get revenge for you. It was very much about if we were all kind to each other. World up at a candy alert. If we were
I love
all,
what we did with Beta in Wonder Woman's Spirit of Truth. I'm very proud of how we handled Beta.
I feel like that alone, I feel like our arguments about that alone are probably deserve their own episode.
At some point, I'm sure we will do one.
But no, I think ultimately you were right about that.
Oh my God! And we have this. We have it recorded now. The world is going to hear you. The world can, in theory, hear you say that I was right about how we developed etiquette.
I also believe we were. I also believe that it was part of a "I will do this if you don't do that" conversation.
Absolutely. It was absolutely, you're going to give me Etta and I will give you the fact that we don't kill Steve Trevor. So my father taught me how to negotiate and I appreciate him for it. But getting back to Wonder Woman and the influences.
Back to that.
Yes. So talking about she was a force that said, if we're all kind to each other.
We're all just kind to each other. If we all just accepted each other, then the world would be a better place. It is very, very important because there's sort of two schools of thought, which is I like you in spite of, I like you even though, and then there's I like you because. Oh, love this. They had no idea this was not how the world worked. So this.
I didn't know that Wonder Woman could do impressions.
Oh, yes. She does impressions, but this is how this woman is looking up. This is how she's looking up. And there's no alphabetical order to that.
There was none. No, she's going through this box of cards, this Rolodex, and it's not an actual Rolodex, and it's not in any discernible order, and that is maddening to me on several levels. But yes, there's acceptance and there's these statements in spite of or because of.
And I always felt like Wonder Woman would say, I like you because you're different, because I'm different too. And she really, comic book characters are very male dominated. It's a very, the characters are very much primarily men. Wonder Woman's kind of the only.
Sorry, this scene is hilarious. She's broken. She's come into the room. We're at 41 minutes and 22 seconds. She's just been leveled with some knockout gas, but she comes in and Gunther is wearing a smoking jacket with a glass of champagne. We were expecting you. Hysterical. But yes, well, it is a fascinating thing where Wonder Woman, that type of acceptance, and I think that comics, especially even in the last, I'd say 10 to 15 years, there is an inclusion with comic books that is sometimes underrepresented in other mediums, right? You look at stories involving non-binary characters. You look at stories involving interracial relationships. You look at stories involving abuse and issues that just aren't with in a lot of other mainstream sources. And it's an amazing community, an amazing medium that really is willing to embrace doing that. Which is one of the reasons I love the industry so much, is that there is a comic for anyone. No matter who you are, no matter how you identify, no matter your upbringing, no matter your taste, there is a comic that will speak to you that you can. And that's extraordinary.
And also, I think also the important thing with comics is that there's two sides to that, which is there's a comic for everyone. There's a comic to identify with. It also makes also a very universal form of storytelling.
Yes.
People sort of look at it as, oh, it's kids and it's action adventure. You don't get emotionally involved just because things are blowing up and people are getting punched through buildings. You get emotionally involved because you actually care about the characters.
Yes.
And the idea that people sort of never, the idea that comics don't deal with very universal and very powerful and very visceral emotions, I think is one of the things that people who don't read comics never really understand.
No, I mean, one example that always comes to my mind is Action Comics 712. It's the story through Crypto, who is, the super dog, created during that time when they had a super horse and they had they were going like crazy, the super ape in the Superman comics. But in issue 712, Crypto is looking for his owner, Connor Kent, who was Superboy and had recently died in the comics. And the entire issue is about a dog who doesn't understand that his owner isn't coming back. And it's heartbreaking and beautiful. And if you've ever owned a pet or suffered a loss of any type in your life, you will tear up. You will get emotional reading that book. And it's so simple. There's no explosion. There's barely any dialogue, from him going around and hearing conversations. There's almost none. It's practically a silent issue. But universally, it gets me. And I'm not even a fan of Connor Kent that much. But damn, it reaches you. And that is a traditional superhero title that people very easy to dismiss, but it makes you feel something.
Yeah. I will tease you almost the entire run of Gotham Central as well.
Oh, absolutely.
It's ostensibly about police officers and dealing with corruption and that type of thing, but it very much is about grief and powerlessness and feeling that he can't handle the larger things. Oh, Steve, poor helpless Steve.
Poor helpless Steve. I love that, though. I love that Steve is helpless and she is the rescuer and she's protecting him, and it's great. But for those of you listening who've never heard of it, Gotham Central is a comic book published by DC Comics. It ran for about 36 issues in the early 2000s, written by Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker, drawn by Michael Clark. It is probably the single greatest detective series in the history of the genre, the history of the medium, excuse me. Cannot recommend it enough. Go out of your way to buy that series.
Okay, so here's another reason that I wanted to go with this episode. If you go to the later episodes of the season, first 3 episodes, the pilot, this one, and the
oh my God, she's attacking her and they're just rolling down a hill.
Fight scenes are very different, and I don't know if they were choreographed by a different person or what it was, but it's very fascinating to
it's literally just these 2 women rolling down a hill together.
And Wonder Woman becomes much more in the first 3 episodes, Wonder Woman is much more of an offensive fighter. She has to be. She's
now lassoed into the pool.
But in the later episodes, she becomes much more of a defensive fighter. And it's really sort of fascinating just from, as a very old person.
Looking back, and it may not have been a difference that you noticed when you were a kid and watching it, but now you recognize it. Perhaps now you'll appreciate it and learn from your unwomanly mistakes. Oh my goodness. Well, it's also fascinating to see the evolution, right? Because you have George Reeves' Superman in the 50s. You have the Adam West Batman in the mid 60s. And now here in the 70s, you get Wonder Woman. And that kind of fascinating sort of progression through the decades. There was a DC character in each decade that really made a mark culturally on television. Fascinating. And in the 80s, you had the short-lived Superboy series. So.
And you had Lois.
You had what? Oh, Lois and Clark was the early 90s, yes.
Okay.
Well, no, because Smallville was 2001. So yeah, you didn't have it. I don't think there was any other DC. Well, in the 90s, you really had the Batman animated series cartoon kind of transcended being
and you
a cartoon.
had the John Wesley ship.
Yes, you did. Which, listen, I cannot give the Berlanti Guggenheim crew enough of how they've embraced all the versions that came before. My one complaint with Crisis on Infinite Earths, that crossover, is they did not bring in Linda Carter Wonder Woman. How dare they?
No, I will say this.
And the episode has ended, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know.
Oh yeah.
We have reached the end here.
Matthew watched his first episode
I did.
Wonder Woman, the TV show.
Because John is the sole writer for our season 2 adventures that we're going to be sharing with you guys very, very, very soon. John, I cannot wait for folks to listen. So I'm going to give you the honors, my friend. What wonderful quote from Wonder Woman to sign us off today?
Okay, so I'm going to go to the pilot episode of Pauletta saying goodbye to Diana as she flies into Man's World. And she says, "Go in peace, my daughter. Remember that in a world of this, you are a Wonder Woman."
On that note, good night and good luck. Remember, keep your ears open, put those buds in, and please don't